So let's turn now to the very first book written in the New Testament, the book of James. Remember? James ben Joseph, James the son of Joseph, was the pastor of the first church in Jerusalem. Probably this is the very first epistle written, first New Testament letter. Comes way in the epistle section because the Gospels chronologically precede it. But as far as in writing, this is probably the earliest New Testament literature that we have. And James captures for us examples in the New Testament of how these lookalikes were dealt with. Because right from the start in the first church in Jerusalem, Pastor James had to deal with people attending the fellowship who could say all the right things, who could pray eloquently, but there was no saving faith evident in their lives. And he began to deal with it. And as we open to James and go to chapter 2, and we'll start in about verse 14 this morning, we'll see how Pastor James, the brother of Jesus, wrote this earliest local assembly of believers who met in Jerusalem. As Christ's earthly brother, he had a great stature after he became a believer, that he grew up with Jesus Christ. He was the son of Joseph and Mary. Jesus wasn't, but James was, and so was Jude, who wrote a later epistle. And there were two other brothers and a couple or more other sisters. And so there was quite a collection of people that had grown up with Jesus Christ. So after his conversion, he became a very great leader in the early church. And he pastored the home church. As we travel around the country and as we just crisscross the country, I'm surprised or not surprised anymore, but it's just amazing every time you drive through these little towns how many first churches you find. You know, the first. This is the first, okay? All the rest are really seconds, okay? Here's the first church in Jerusalem. And from the start, James, as the leader of this church, was talking about how to face those who want the benefits of salvation but do not want to bow the knee to Christ. They don't want to live the life. They can talk the talk, they don't live the life. And because James gives us such a clear description in this passage of a faith that's unable to save sinners, it's unhealthy, it's defective, it's faith. See, faith must be healthy faith. It must be sound faith. It can't just be faith. Many people have faith in many things, as we'll see, and as James lists. We each need to be personal faith examiners this morning. In James 2, starting verse 14, we can listen to one of James' most stirring messages. He delivered it to those early saints, sprinkled even then with a group of Christian lookalikes. James has a very stern warning for those churchgoers. He said, examine whether your faith is real. And his first point is this, and if you like points, he says, beware of merely having intellectual faith. Assent, just assenting to the facts. Intellectual faith. That's verses 14 to 17. Basically, before we read those verses, intellectual faith is unhealthy faith, it's insufficient faith, it's unsound faith. James calls it dead faith. Dead. Kind of like necrotic tissue. It defiles everything. It's dead. Because it can't change the heart. It touches only the intellect. This form of dead faith, listen to his description, starting verse 14 of James 2. What does it profit, my brethren? See, he's speaking to the church. If someone says he has faith but does not have works, can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, you give them a great word, but look what he says, but do not give them the things which are needed for the body. What does it profit? Verse 17. Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Very strong message. Must have been amazing to have been in that congregation as he spoke so sternly to those saints. This faith that talks but never does is what he's addressing. These are Christian lookalikes who can pray and talk about God, but their hearts have never been changed. Their operating system, the very real them on the inside, has never changed. James uses a simple test of compassion. If a poor believer showed up at church, obviously in need, and those who realized this need and did nothing about it, God said their faith is dead. They can see genuine need and do not have the compassion of Christ in their heart.